Hi guys, welcome to my guide for beginner priest. This is a deck like the other beginner decks. It only has two commons, whereas everything else is a basic card. So the two commons that we have in this deck are Thought Steal, as well as Circle of Healing, and I will explain why I selected those two cards in a bit. Firstly, I'd like to run through a bit of the strategy on how this deck aims to win. And Priest is a class which is naturally given cards that can copy cards from your opponent's decks or outright just take them, like Mind Control, take control of the enemy minion, and you are also given Mind Vision as a basic card, which puts a copy of random card in your opponent's hand into your hand. So the idea of this deck is basically we are going to, in a way, steal from our opponent's deck the cards that they have, and most likely they're going to be better cards than the one we have in this deck, and we're going to use it against them. And we are going to use the fact that we have healing cards to make the cards that we steal from our opponents more effective. So the stuff that we steal from our opponents, we can use it more effectively than they can, simply because we can heal it if it's a minion. And regarding everything else in the deck, as far as minions go, we just aim to get as much value as possible so that we can hold our ground while we steal the cards from their deck and gain advantage. So, firstly, I'll start with our 0 mana card, which is the first common, Circle of Healing. Circle of Healing. It restores 4 health to all minions. Now this card is used in a lot of priest decks, but normally it is used with this card, Okanai Soul Priest. Because when you use Okanai Soul Priest followed by Circle of Healing, it basically becomes a board clear that deals 4 damage to all minions. However, in this case, since we don't have any rares in this deck, we are using the Circle of Healing instead to heal the minions that we have in an area effect. So it synergizes really well with our 1 mana minion, Northshire Cleric, which is a 1/3 for 1 mana, and it's really good value. Whenever a minion is healed, draw a card. So we want to use this card in order to rapidly cycle to our deck if possible. Note that we can also use the Priest hero power to heal a minion and draw a card. We also have the 1 mana card, Mind Vision, which puts a copy of a random card in your opponent's hand into your hand, which is really good because one thing to note is that when we steal a card from, or copy a card rather, from our opponent's hand, he doesn't know what it is. So this card gives us information on what our opponent has in his hand, at least one of the cards, but our opponent doesn't know which card we copied from him. So he's going to assume, and most probably the worst case scenario. So it really helps get in their head and affects the way they play this game, which is why Mind Vision is a good card given the strategy that we are trying to play. Most priest decks will include a copy of Power Word Shield because for 1 mana it gives it +2 health and draw a card. The reason why, I mean, this is such a great card and is in fact one of the top priest cards. However, the reason why we don't include it in this particular deck is simply because we don't have that many high impact low mana minions to begin with. And we don't have that many good, like 2 or 3 mana minions to give 2 health. Even though it does give us the ability to cycle and draw an additional card from our deck, I didn't put it in because the thing is, if we were to put Power Word Shield as well as Mind Vision and Northshire Cleric in our deck, we would have 6 1 mana cards, which makes our deck too orientated towards the early game, which is something that I like to avoid. However, you guys can try and put Power Word Shield in instead of maybe one of our 2 mana minions and see how you go. However, I've tried it out and I found that having an extra 2 mana minion in this deck seems to work a bit better than having a power word shield. So I've talked about our 1 mana cards and 0 mana cards, and now I'll start talking about our 2 mana cards. The first one is Shadow Word Pain, which is 2 mana, destroy a minion with 3 or less attack. This is a fantastic card for mitigating early game aggression. And also to note is that this will destroy minions with Divine Shield. If you watch the gameplay video of this deck, you see a game against Paladin, a Divine Shield kind of deck, a Divine Shield orientated deck, in which we discard and its big brother Shadow Word Death do a lot of work. Mm, it's very effective against minions with 3 or less attack value that have really big abilities. For example, something like the legendary Brand Bronzebeard, which is a 2/4 minion. This is a very useful card against that. As well as, say, for shamans, you have Totem Golem, which is a 2 mana 3/4 overload. This card is really effective against that as well. Uh, so yeah, this is a fantastic basic card, and usually is auto include in any priest deck. Next at 2 mana, we have Acidic Swamp Ooze, 3/2 minion for 2 mana, with a battle cry that destroys your opponent's weapon. This is fantastic as a priest because um, when you play a priest, your 1 mana minion, Norsha Cleric, is really vulnerable to weapons. Specifically, the Fiery War Axe that Warrior has can immediately remove this card from the game. So, having an Acidic Swamp Ooze to kind of protect your Norsha Cleric from potential weapon attacks is really useful. Also, just in general, it helps mitigate aggressions by certain aggressive weapon decks like Face Hunter and also Pirate Warrior. This card is a very useful card that not everybody runs, but it definitely has very high impact if you can get it to drop when your opponent happens to be holding a weapon. Next at 2 mana, we have River Propolis, a 2/3 for 2 mana. The reason why I picked a 2/3 minion over a 3/2 minion is because as a priest, we have the ability to heal. And a 2/3 minion can take out, is more likely to survive after trading with a smaller minion than a 3/2 minion is. And we can essentially spend 2 mana in order to heal it, or if we happen to have a circle of healing, we can heal it for free. So it just gives some additional flexibility. And there are cases where this card will survive when a 3/2 won't survive. Also, it's less prone to AoE, area of effect abilities. So that's the reason why I picked a 2/3 over a 3/2. When you upgrade this deck, there are 2/3 minions with abilities for 2 mana that you can put instead of this card, and I recommend it. However, for basic card, this is the best we have at 2 mana. Next at 3 mana is Shadow Word Death, the big brother of Shadow Word Pain. This one destroys a minion with an attack of 5 or more. So this is a very cost efficient trade because minions with attack of 5 or more usually cost 5 mana or more, and we can kill it for free, or not for free, but rather for 3 mana, which means that we have at least a 2 mana advantage over our opponent, which we can use to, I don't know, cast Mind Vision, we can use to put down a small minion, and stuff like that, or we can use our hero power on the minion. So stuff like that. This is a very good card that delivers value. Note, however, the fact that both these cards are unable to target 4 mana minions. And there are some dangerous 4 mana minions out there, which um, priests traditionally struggle with. Uh, for example, something like a Chillwind Yeti, which we have in this deck. If our opponent plays it against us, we're going to struggle against it because in order to take out a minion with 5 damage, we are most likely going to have to use 2 smaller minions. So it's just a very important thing to note. And if we see an opponent play a minion with 4 attack, we have to quickly develop a plan in order to bring it down before we get too distracted by it in order to execute our game plan. Next at 3 mana after Shadow Word Death is Thoughtsteal. This is the second common of this deck. What it does is it copies 2 cards from your opponent's deck and puts it into your hand. So this gives you a rough idea, can give you a rough idea of what type of strategy your opponent is figuring out, is trying out. It also uh, gets into your opponent's head a little bit because they don't know what you took. And if you manage to take high impact cards like legendaries, fantastic. Even if you don't manage to take particularly good cards, getting two free cards out of your opponent's deck for 3 mana already delivers value because this is a Thought Seal is one card and it generates two cards out of your opponent's deck, which basically gives you a +1 in terms of card advantage. Of course, it does cost 3 mana and does not put a minion on the board for it. So be careful when you use this. You most likely do not want to use this when you are being overwhelmed on the board. So just keep that in mind that Thoughtsteal does open up the potential for enemy aggression. And also to note, we only run one copy of Thoughtsteal. And the reason of why we only run one copy of Thoughtsteal is because Thoughtsteal can be a dead card if we play it when our opponent has a board advantage. Mm, and so we definitely do not want to get stuck in a situation where we have two Thoughtsteals in our hand and we are getting overwhelmed. That's why I only put one in there, and I put one Darkscale Healer later on to kind of compensate for it and put an extra minion in this deck. Next at 3 mana we have Inferred Grizzly. 3 mana 3/3 with taunt, good at slowing our opponent down. If we can heal it, it could potentially tank up to 2 smaller minions. So it's not the best card at 3 mana again, I keep saying this whenever I make a beginner deck, but it's the best we got for this slot. Next at 3 mana is Shattered Sun Cleric, a 3/2 that gives a friendly minion +1/+1. It's a very useful and versatile card because it allows cards like Northshire Cleric to become a 2/4. It makes River Propolis a 3/4, and a 2/4 and a 3/4 are more likely to be able to attack small minions and allow you to heal them next turn. So this is a very versatile card to use in this deck, and we want minions with high toughness because that gives us more opportunity to heal them. Next at 4 mana we have Chillwind Yeti, 4/5 for 4 mana, very good at surviving, does enough damage to kill smaller minions. We can use this card to tank up our opponent's 4 mana minions because like I said, we don't have a clear way of removing it in this deck. However, this card, Chillwind Yeti, won't die to 4 mana minions that our opponent plays. And if they buff their minion to have more than 4 damage in order to kill this card, it makes them prone to Shadow or Death. So just great value for 4 mana, which is why we include 2 of these cards in all our beginner decks. Next at 4 mana is Oasis Snapjaw, 2/7 for 4. So what this card is really good at is that it's good at removing small minions that our opponent has on the board. For example, this card will be able to fight off 3/2s and be able to take out 3 minions like that before it dies. And we don't really need to place too much priority on having high attack value because in the late game, we're not going to use minions to kill off our opponent's big minions. I think that's one of the things that's a great advantage of this deck is that if our opponent plays something like 6/6 or 7/7, we don't actually, in an ideal situation, we don't want to trade with that. We want to use a spell to destroy it or take control of it. And so a lot of our mid game and early game minions are just geared to destroying our opponent's mid game and early game minions as well. Next at 5 mana we have Holy Nova, which deals 2 damage to all enemies and restores 2 health to all friendly characters. This has good synergy with Northshire Cleric as well, because whenever it heals one of your minions you draw a card. So it's a very useful card for that scenario, also a very useful card to kind of reset the board state. In case we're playing against an aggressive deck, we might be behind on turn 5, say like if we're up against like a Face Hunter or an aggressive Zoo Warlock. 2 damage in area effect will kill off most of their minions, and it restores 2 health to yourself, your hero as well, which is great. And we run 2 copies of this in the deck in order to basically, because at this point when we play Holy Nova the first time is when we want to tell aggressive decks that okay, that's enough. Now it's our turn to play our cards and take control of the board. Also at 5 mana, we have one copy of Darkscale Healer, which is a 4/5 or 5 mana and restores 2 health to all friendly characters when you play it. So this is a fantastic card. It synergizes well with our 4 mana minions because our 4 mana minions all have pretty high toughness, pretty high health, and restoring 2 health uh, to them, after they've perhaps traded with a smaller minion, can make them survive a lot longer than our opponent wants to, and can just win you the game straight like that. Or it can give you openings to cast your mind visions and your thought steals without being punished by our opponent putting down additional minions on the board. Next, at 6 mana, we have it's in a similar position to Yeti. Great stats for its mana cost. This is just a great body on the board that we have that can win us the game. That because 6 damage puts a lot of pressure on our opponent. So this card can win us the game if our thought steals and our mind vision don't give us our opponent's great minions. Maybe we only manage to copy small minions from their deck. Maybe we only managed to copy spells. We still need a way to finish the game, and Boulder Fist Ogre gives us that finishing power. 6 damage, 2 copies of them in this deck, with a 6 attack ability, 5 attacks will do 30 damage. But, with given our early game minions and mid game minions, we could probably, ideally, you want them down to something like 18 health when you play this card, 18-20 health, and then this card can essentially just walk you through the victory because every time they try and put a big minion to contest this, you can cast Shadow or Death. You trade with some of your other minions. You can also cast Mind Control later on in the game, and I'll get to the card in a second because it is our last card in this deck. The ultimate ghetto card of Priest, Mind Control at 10 mana, straight up take control of an enemy minion. Now this is annoying as hell card, especially if you happen to have a board advantage already. So what happens is like the ideal situation when you play this card is when you have a big minion up. Say like a Chillwind Yeti, Boulder Fist Ogre. Our opponent has nothing on the board. It's his turn, and he plays something really big in order to contest our minion. Maybe it's his best card. Maybe it's like something like a Sylvanas Windrunner, legendary card. So he's got 1 minion, we've got 1 minion, the board's in the stalemate. Suddenly we play Mind Control, we steal his legendary, and we still have our original minion, and he's basically screwed. And that's the idea when you use Mind Control. It's a good card when you're even or when you're ahead. Mind Control will straight up just win you the game. And also, it's such an annoying card to play against. It's not a great card because it costs 10 mana, so it should win you the game. But it's just so annoying to play against when your opponent thinks that they're about to contest you. They think the game's even, and suddenly it's just over. So yeah, that's the strategy of this deck. We basically copy from our opponent, we steal from our opponent, ghetto style. And this card is warning, before you play this deck, is that you may end up getting a lot of friend invites by other people that will proceed to insult you when you do add them. Most likely after you beat them, because this priest deck is a deck that's really fun to play, but terrible for our opponents to play against. And the thing is that this deck is very capable of beating better and more expensive decks simply because we have the ability to steal from them, and also simply because these kind of cards like Shadow Worth Death and Shadow Worth Pain, they just straight up destroy a minion. They don't really care what the minion's ability is. Target it, dead. So that's why it can be really annoying to play against this deck. And so if you play against this deck, you might get a bit of hate for it. Just a warning in advance. Anyway, thanks for listening to my guide. I'll post an upgraded priest deck pretty soon after I cover the beginner guides for a couple of other classes. Thanks for watching. Oh, and please leave any comments that you have in this video so I can get back to you.